Welcome to the midpoint of Denver Startup Week. My name is Kate Barton. I am the Chief of External Affairs and Managing Director at the Downtown Denver Partnership. We are proud sponsors of Denver Startup Week, and also our team leads the organization for this great event, so really appreciate you all being here. I am absolutely delighted to welcome you all to this really special keynote, and I'll introduce our speakers here in a moment, but just want to first say thank you for being part of this week, this free celebration of everything entrepreneurial in Denver. We are bringing together entrepreneurs from across this country and across the world to gain inspiration, insights, and to connect with one another. So make sure that you meet someone new, learn something new, and share about it on social media. I'll also encourage that if you have not yet done so, we have Liz Elting's books here today and would love for everyone to take one away. I think that after you hear from her, you will be so inspired to do so. Before we get to our speakers, I just want to quickly thank our sponsors. We cannot do this without the support of our sponsors. So to Amazon, Capital One Cafe, the Downtown Denver Partnership, and all of the folks who contribute to make this week free, we thank you. With that, I am pleased to kick us into this conversation with Liz Elting, who is an entrepreneur and leader in the community. I also feel a special connection to Liz because we are alumni of the same college, so that's really fun, reigning from Hartford, Connecticut. And we have Carol Carter from Global Minded here who will lead the conversation. So with that, I will open it up to Liz and Carol, and enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for prioritizing this over your lunch break. I'll give you just a little bit of background of how Liz is here today with all of you. As Kate said, my name is Carol Carter, and I'm the founder and CEO of Global Minded, and also an entrepreneur of 24 years from a different company that I started, but 17 years in corporate prior to that. And I will tell you that corporate in no way prepared me to start a company. So I wish I had Liz's book, which Denver Downtown Partnership and Kate and Eric Matisik have very generously provided for you all attending today. So we have them over there, and on your way out, we hope you all will each get a book. So we met Liz through a colleague who nominated Liz for one of Global Minded's Inclusive Leader Awards last year, which she won in the category of entrepreneurship. And I got a couple of emails a few weeks ago saying, come meet the billionaires at Startup Week. And I wrote Eric, and I'm like, where are the women? And lo and behold, we're all a big network, and we can really bring wonderful talent like Liz here. So we're thrilled that Liz is here, and I want to just have her say a few words before we get into the question and the interview. And we'll have time for Q&A later, too. So be thinking of your questions for Liz.
Well, thank you so much, Carol, for that beautiful introduction, and thank you all for being here today, and thanks so much to Kate as well, my fellow Bantam from Trinity. But yes, I love that you wanted to make sure we had a woman entrepreneur here, and I love that we have all these women in the audience, and men. My book is for women and men, so excited to have you all here and to be here. Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll get started. The first question for Liz is, only 1% of women have businesses that go over $1 million, much less $1 billion. What challenges, Liz, did you face in your own experience as a woman founder, starting out with few resources on hand, and how did you beat the odds starting out in your NYU dorm room?
Sure, absolutely. And yes, and I can, I think a lot of women experience issues, but it's hard for any entrepreneur, right, to get to $1 million in revenue, or 10 million. That's by far the hardest. And the reason I did start the company is because I tried very briefly a stint in finance after getting my MBA from NYU, realized after only 6 weeks I didn't like the industry and I didn't like the culture. It was sexist. And finance wasn't my thing anyway. So I decided, if not now, when? I was 26 years old, and as you said, Carol, started out of an NYU Business School dorm room. And it's interesting because at the time there were 10,000 other translation companies out there, but they were tiny, between 1 and 5 people each. And the reason I say that is if you're an entrepreneur and you have a lot of competition, that's okay. You can be different, you can be better, you can be the biggest in a fragmented industry. So that was what I set out to do. And what I found was it was all about me in the early days and what I did. And one of the things I often say is funding is vanity, profitable revenue is sanity. And that's how we built the company. Sales, sales, sales. I was the most important salesperson from day one. And then, of course, that changed over the years because we had a huge sales team. But I think that's super important for entrepreneurs to remember that they need to be that salesperson. We did not have a business plan. I didn't want to spend my time preparing a PowerPoint and pitching it to investors, no deck, none of that. I figured that's sales. Why not instead just get into it and find clients? And did that a number of ways. For me, it was hundreds of phone calls a day, hundreds of letters, and then getting that first project, wowing the client with service, and turning that project into multiple projects, and then turning that into a relationship. But I think it's really important for entrepreneurs to remember they should be focusing on revenue from day one, because you may have all the funding in the world after a lot of work getting it, and then if you don't have the revenue, you're going to go out of business. You're going to be unhappy, and your investors are as well. So sales, sales, sales. And I mentioned phone calls and letters for me. For you, it might be, because this was back in 1992, but LinkedIn messages or networking events like this, or just developing that network and making sure people remember you. And then when they have a need for your service, they're likely to come to you.
And one of the things you'll see when you read Liz's book is that Liz put in so many different hours. And I was here yesterday for the CEO opening. These are some of the threads that are repeated by the super successful entrepreneurs. For men and women, 1 in 10 businesses succeed. What is it that emerging entrepreneurs, especially those in this room, need to know to be able to successfully identify goals, scale, and grow their businesses?
Yes. Okay, so I talked all about sales just now, and you being that salesperson, because as I mentioned, you need to be able to do that. You need to be comfortable doing it. And so many great entrepreneurs out there have wonderful businesses with a great infrastructure, a great idea, great technology, but if they don't have salespeople, or if they're not selling, it all goes to nothing. So after you've brought in those initial clients and wowed them with service, as I said, and gotten to a certain amount, in our case, it was about $50,000 a month in revenue for 3 consecutive months, then hire that first salesperson and have the same expectations of them. Give them goals whereby they need to sell a certain amount for a certain time period, 3 consecutive months perhaps, and then they can hire the next person and so on. And the point behind all of this is to develop a world-class sales organization, to develop the biggest sales team in your industry. And that was my goal, and that paid off big time for us. Because ultimately when I sold a few years ago, we had over 600 full-time salespeople, and they were out there building the company every day. And obviously most of the sales are repeat business and referrals based on delivering, wowing the client with service. But the point is you need that sales team, and that's how you're going to scale your company, along with spoiling the client and the employees, which we can get to in a minute.
And one of the things I think is so interesting you see in Liz's book is she had a vision for this really early on, and then she hired people who had the same vision and the same passion, and they worked as hard as Liz. And so that passion and stick-to-itness,
yes,
is
and that
a big
does
part.
relate to this. So that's the point. And I heard the person who was speaking just before us talk about hiring people you like. Yes, you like is nice, but also overachievers, people who are entrepreneurial, super motivated, people who impress you, wow you, that are smarter than you, and then pay them like entrepreneurs. Make so that if they're not successful, they make less than they would at the competition. But if they're delivering, they make more. So very much incentivize them financially. Make it so that, their and the company's incentives are completely aligned. As far as other things about the employees, I can say a lot because I believe in creating. First of all, they work long hours. We worked crazy hours for the first few years, and so did they, but it paid off because they might have started in an office building it from scratch. They had their goals, and they were alone, and then they built their office to 50, 100, 200 people. And so then they were in a very good situation. The other thing I can say about employees as far as treating them like owners is get their ideas up. That's critical, and I can talk a lot about that. That does two things. Number one, it makes the company better with the products, ideas, incentives, and it also makes the employees happy. So, okay.
And that's related to the next question,
well, okay,
which is...
so that's related to the next question, so I won't go on about that. And so yes, but making your company be an employer of choice in your industry, and ideally any industry, that happens as a result of all this.
100%. What makes ownership crucial to the success of a business, and how can leaders instill ownership in their teams?
Yes. Well, of course, the owner, the CEO, you, the founder, is going to act like an owner. That goes without saying. Nobody's going to do it and believe it if you don't. So you need to lead by example. That's the only way to lead. Work the same hours or more that you expect your people to. But then, as I mentioned, compensate them like owners, and then there are a lot of other things you can do. Like, I'm a big believer in meeting with your employees once a week, one-on-one, or if that's not feasible, once every 2 weeks, one-on-one when you get to a certain size, and getting their ideas. And the first thing you want to do is say, how are you doing? And how are you doing, meaning how are you doing personally? Make sure they're okay, make sure they're happy. That's very important. And then, how are you doing professionally? Are you getting what you want out of this company and your career goals? That's super important. And then finally, my favorite question, what would you do differently if you owned the company? And sometimes they'll say, oh, nothing. Everything's great. And then you ask them again, they're like, oh, nothing. It's like, no, really. And then you get the answer. And that's how we got so many of our wonderful ideas. Another way to get ideas was we required people to come up with new ideas in order to get promoted to the next level. So that was very helpful as well. And some of our best ideas we had at the company came from our employees who were on the front line. So they were product offerings, service offerings, starting new divisions. So that was super valuable as well. And I'll just give you one little anecdote about why that's so important. There was a time when I had this employee who I thought was terrific, sitting right next to me, right outside my office, and I thought everything was great. We would deal with each other back and forth, all day long. And I thought, okay, she's happy, I'm happy. And then one day she came in to me and she said, I quit. And I thought, wow, how could I not know that? And that's why I introduced these one-on-ones. And after that, I knew if there was a problem. Of course, you never want to be surprised by anyone resigning. And of course, they should never be surprised by your terminating them. So that's where the feedback comes in, and that weekly or bi-weekly feedback.
I also think it's great, Liz, how much you empowered all the people that you worked with to take that ownership and have their ideas, and that fueled so much of your success, which is, I think, key to any organization.
Oh, yes. If they come up with an idea and they came up with great ideas, then they get that promotion. If there was a promotion related to having an idea, assuming they produced all the other results that they needed to, and then letting them run with that idea. Is a wonderful, wonderful way to go.
Why should every entrepreneur focus on verbs and actions?
Well, a lot of people talk about creating a world-changing app. I know a lot of entrepreneurs who do that, or a unicorn. And they say, what's your secret sauce? What's the silver bullet? And I think we all know, all of the people out there who've done it, it's just about having the goals, putting them down on paper, telling the people in your life what they are, and then backing them up with the actions you need to do to accomplish those goals, and doing that, holding yourself to them, day in and day out, month in and month out, year in and year out, over a sustained period of time. I think Warren Buffett has a great quote, what differentiates the average people in the world from the mega successful is simply discipline. Those aren't his exact words, but that's the sentiment, and I think that is exactly it. So that's super important. So it's about actions, doing eclipses dreaming. I'm trying to think, there's so many examples of things you want to do, like things like obviously come up with the actions to produce the revenue and then wow the client with service and really, really do it. An example of that is once we had a situation where after a couple of years in business, it was just my partner and me at the time. We still hadn't started hiring employees because, as I mentioned, we built our company without funding. And we were about to just take a couple days off over Christmas. Seemed reasonable. Right as we were walking out the door, Goldman Sachs called. And they said, okay, well, we actually have a need for your language services because our usual provider is closing for the holidays. Can you, come down and do it? And this was Christmas Eve morning. And we thought, okay, this is our way to bring Goldman in. So we went down there and we stayed there for a few days and, canceled the trip. And after that, Goldman Sachs became a multi-million-dollar client. So that's an example of showing up when others won't and doing what others don't, the wowing the client with service, and then getting your employees to do the same. And if they are incentivized properly, they will. I mean, I heard what the person before us was saying, you can't expect people to work crazy, crazy hours over a sustained period of time. Yes, you've got to figure out ways around that. And we did over time by having shifts. We had 3 different shifts at our company. We opened offices around the world in over 100 cities. And so we had people in other time zones hiring people's work, and then we had comp time. So there are ways around it, but being there when the client needs it and spoiling them is so incredibly valuable.
And maybe we'll skip this next question, which is why are hopes and dreams not enough? Because I think you made that really clear in the actions and the specifics people have to have.
Can I just say one more thing?
Say something on that.
One other anecdote about that is when we got one of our early million-dollar jobs, a big job for us, the only way we could get it done with the employees we had at the time was working for about a week straight with many all-nighters, and we even got our employees involved in that. And you think, oh my God, how are you going to get your people to do that? But then after, and this was when we had about 20 people, we took the whole company to the Bahamas for a long weekend, 3 or 4 days, and they loved it, and it was bonding. So there are ways around it if you have to do crazy things to build that client base, that loyal client base.
Awesome. And how can every entrepreneur hire and grow exceptional leaders?
Sure. Well, as I said, I think you want to, when you're interviewing people, look for people not who necessarily have experience and in your industry or otherwise, but people that are motivated, people who have that ambition, that drive, who've been successful in whatever they've done. And in our case, what we did is we hired a lot of entry-level people, but these were people who'd been successful in sports, in school, or they'd worked hard because they didn't have any choice. They were motivated financially, they were ambitious. So they wowed me in ways like that they had the ambition, they had some talents or skills, and then above all, they were curious. So I think when you're hiring people, look for that in anyone. Not so much where they've worked, but are they curious? And do they want to learn? And are they proactive? Can they be talking about ideas for your company in the interview? Okay, so bring people in when they're young and ready to be molded, and and that what works well for entrepreneurs because they're not too expensive. And then lead by example and do a lot of training. You know, we had a month training program, and then we had regular training because our people were all over the world, so we needed to bring them together. And networking, I think that's critical. And then, as I said earlier, incentivize them to be leaders. Make it so they have a big team, they are coming up with ideas for the company, and they are financially incentivized. And make it so you've created a company which is an employer of choice, as I said, in your industry and ideally any industry. And those are some of the ways.
And one of the secrets you shared is to really over-deliver to your customers. So Liz, let's hear a little bit about that, because I think that's one of the key cornerstones of why TransPerfect was so successful. But for people starting out, they may not know exactly what that looks like if they haven't maybe been with a big company or been in a client-facing relationship. So if you can share about that, that'd be great.
You know, in the early days, you know, when you're a small team, it's you and your partner, or you and a few people doing like things like the Goldman Sachs example I gave, for sure. But there were other things, like clients would ask us for some crazy things, like, okay, I have 1 million words that I need translated, and this is pre-AI. So there was no computer involved in translating material. 1 million words that I need translated in a few weeks. Can you do it? And all the other translation companies would say, no, it's not possible. We said yes, and then we found a way. I mean, we warned them. We said, okay, we can't give you perfect quality because it's a crazy amount in a relatively short amount of time, but we will find a way. And then we did. And then our people worked incredibly hard, and we got it done. And that type of thing happened a lot. And we wowed them with service, quality, turnaround time, and then they became regular clients. So that was certainly one thing we did. We also really got to know our clients. So Harvey Mackay, many years ago, published a book called Swim with the Sharks, and it's all about the Mackay 66 and knowing 66 things about your clients. So the point is, make it so you're close to them. They're your friends. You know their spouses, you know their hobbies, you know their favorite type of vodka, whatever it is. And we really did. We got to know them personally, and then let them know that if there's anything they need, you're there for them. Because, you know, whatever industry you're in, it could be somewhat commoditized. So make it so they're the person you want to call. I mean, aside from for the actual service you're offering. I think that's super important. Another thing we did is, after each project we did a quick follow-up email with the client to make sure they were happy, or a follow-up phone call. Another thing we did is we had annual questionnaires for our clients, and basically said, okay, you know, what's right, what's wrong, how do you feel about the person you're working with, what could we do differently, are there any other services we could offer you? Another thing is we had VIP client events where we brought our important clients together. I mean, they were all important, but the bigger clients together, and we got to know them, they got to know each other, they loved the networking component, and we would often do it by, you know, something that made sense for them, either where they were located geographically or other people in their industry. We did a number of things, a whole bunch of things over the years for our clients, which were critical, which really differentiated ourselves. And that's what you need to do, because no matter what industry you're in, you have competition. You have to be different and better. And you can find ways. And, you know, as I said, above all, it's about client service, especially in this day and age when people are emailing and not talking to their clients. Really getting to know your clients is so critical. They want that warm body. They want that friend.
Yeah, it's about relationships. It's
about
key
relationships, because then if by chance you mess up, and as you grow, it will happen. They're
forgiving.
They'll want to make it work with you because they enjoy working with you.
Yeah, 100%. Where did the inspiration and the title from your book come from? And how did you dream big and win in your life now that you have been a very successful entrepreneur? So back.
Oh, thank you. Well, as far as the idea for the book, I wrote the book because it's the book I wished I had when I was in my 20s, starting my career and starting my company. I learned a lot along the way by trial and error. That's often how it goes. And I wished I had known what I put in my book. And I did read whatever business books I could get my hands on. I remember I would work like crazy, and then at night I would read a business book, but they were very much how-to, a little dry, and I didn't really get to know the person who wrote the book. I wanted something where they talked about what they did right, but also what they did wrong, and I wanted to be entertained. I wanted some vulnerability. So anyway, I wrote it really as the mentor, kind of guide, roadmap for future entrepreneurs. And as far as the name, yes, like anything, there was a lot of thought in that name, but you know, I had dreamt big. As I mentioned, when we started the company, 10,000 competitors, and I thought, boy, I don't want to do what everybody else is doing. If I do this, I want to be the biggest and the best. And so I think a lot of you may feel that way. A lot of entrepreneurs may feel that way. So I think it's all about dreaming big. I think Michael Bloomberg has a great quote, something like, if you're not failing some of the time, you're not dreaming big enough. So basically, the point is dream big and you're going to do better. Margaret Thatcher has a quote that dream big and maybe you won't get to the stars, but you'll get damn near close or something like that. So I'm a big believer in dreaming big. And then if you dream big, as I said earlier, come up with the action goals and the actions and hold yourself to them. And then make sure you're doing something you love and you enjoy working with the people that you're working with. You will win, because that's a win in itself.
Well, and my background was in college publishing, and I will tell you that working for Pearson, there were a lot of business books that were very theoretical about entrepreneurship, and they were written by people who had never started a company. And I just thought to myself, okay, you can theoretically write about these things, but if you haven't gone out yourself and you've actually been able to be successful, how is that exactly credible when we're trying to teach a bunch of people in business school programs? So I think one of the things that I was so drawn to when I read Liz's book is just thinking 24 years ago when I started a company and left corporate, this would have been a roadmap that I just had no background in, and I just feel like so much of what we have to do now, especially to close the equity gap, if we want to see more women, more people of color, more people who are from underrepresented backgrounds being able to be successful as entrepreneurs, which they absolutely can be with the right connections and guidance like Liz has in her book, we can have so much more of a thriving economy. But those things are needed, and we have to be really real, as Liz is in her book, about what our shortcomings are and the really specific ways we can address those and not walk around like we're perfect people. And I think that's one of the things in general that for Global Minded and for our entrepreneurial equity work that we do every June, it's a really key piece of this. So I think you're going to find that, right within Liz's books. It's really powerful. I don't care what age you are. You could be still in high school, want to start a company, or you might be working for a big company. You might be with Amazon and say, you know what? Everyone has to have an entrepreneurial mindset in this day and age. You really cannot be in the age of AI and all the different things that are happening out there and not be able to have that entrepreneurial, scrappy, get it done spirit, because so much happens through that and there's no way around it. It's just...
That's right. Technology is moving so fast, but I agree with everything you said. Yes, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're in a company, you should be an intrapreneur, coming up with new ideas for for the employees, for the clients, just for the company as a whole on how to grow the company. And that's how you will succeed, whether you're at another company or certainly your own.
Yeah.
So absolutely. And what Carol does, I mean, I don't know what Carol has done with Global Minded, supporting all these wonderful students, motivated students in high school and college, and training them and making it so they stay in the workforce and they can have very successful careers. It's just wonderful what you do. And boy, is she an entrepreneur in that effort. It's fabulous. But related to what you're saying, I mean, everyone should do this in order to be successful, because economic power is social power and social power is political power. And if we have this power, that's how we change the world.
100%. So Liz, what advice would you give to your 25-year-old self from where you are now?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and I didn't know much about anything at 25. I just knew that at age 26, I'd found myself in a job in finance that I quickly realized was not for me after getting my MBA in finance and international business from NYU. And because I was so miserable there, after only 6 weeks, as I said, I left and started TransPerfect. But had I not been in that situation, I might have just stayed with what I was doing. Maybe not, I was miserable, I didn't have a choice. But if you have something and you're just like, I'm doing what I should do, what my parents want me to do, what is expected of me, go for it. Take the risk. Be bold, take the risk. When you're young. I mean, do it when you're older too. I mean, nothing wrong with doing it when you're my age, but when you're young, in your 20s, in your 30s, before you have a lot of other commitments, because it's a risk. First of all, it's easier before you are married with kids. I mean, it is, no question about it. Not that you can't do it, you just need to be really organized. But when you're young, do it, because that's where you learn. And the worst thing that's going to happen is it's not going to work out. But it's a risk not to do it, because you may be miserable doing what you think you should do. And by the time you become older, you'll think, oh, wow, I never even tried it. So take the risk early, be bold. It's a risk not to. And you're going to learn a lot, you're going to network, and you may, in fact, have the time of your life and really live out your dream.
And Liz, why did you start the Liz Elting Foundation, and how does this reflect your passion and your purpose to serve the causes that you care about most? Liz is one of the most generous people out there on the planet, and it's incredible the kinds of things that she has invested in, from American Heart Association to Waldenstrom's lymphoma, which I'm a blood cancer survivor myself, which is why Global Minded started, to NYU Stern School, to investing in a bunch of women. So talk a little bit about the foundation and how it is your why now.
Yeah, it's definitely, and what Carol's doing with Global Minded is beyond generous with her time. I mean, fabulous, if for those of you who don't know or do know. Okay, but I did it because to whom much is given, I mean, and was given through hard work and goals and all that, but good timing and great employees and fabulous clients, much to whom much is given. When we achieve a certain level of success, it's really our responsibility to give back. Mm-hmm. I was one of the lucky ones because I grew up with the right parents who basically emphasized and forced the importance of hard work and education. And they made me work, but they also paid for my education, both undergrad and business school, and they led by example. And so many people don't have that situation. They're born in the wrong zip code, they're born in the wrong situation for whatever reason. So I wanted to do it for that reason. And then over the years, I also saw issues being a woman in business. I saw them at my very brief stint in finance, and then over the years at my own company. I saw it with me, and I saw it with a number of our employees. And I thought, wow, when I get to my next phase, which I did after 26 years, I want to start a foundation and give back so that all of us can who can reach our highest potential and live longer, healthier lives. And it's such a joy to do it now, because it's wonderful, having the opportunity to focus on it now, both as far as financial resources and time and whatever expertise I've developed. So I absolutely love it.
And just share a little bit more about some of those causes, because there's like 20-some causes that Liz funds, and it's amazing. We had some of them out here in June, which was great.
Oh, yes, thank you. Well, you mentioned, let's see, entrepreneurs. I'm a big believer that entrepreneurship is a great equalizer. And, I said that earlier, economic power is social power, and social power is political power, and that's how we change the world. And anybody can be an entrepreneur. So as a result, I fund entrepreneurs through NYU Endless Frontier Labs. I fund the top few women-led company every year. Yeah, companies every year. It's the best accelerator program in the world. Actually, if any of you is looking to be involved with an accelerator program, anyone can do it. You don't need an affiliation with NYU. The entrepreneurs tend to be ages 25 to 75, people who have amazing life-changing ideas related to life sciences, deep tech, and digital tech. And basically, they have opportunities for funding, for mentoring, and for free work from the MBA students. So that's one of the ones I fund. Another is American Heart Association Social Impact Fund, and that funds entrepreneurs from marginalized and diverse communities, and they are helping address the indirect determinants of heart disease, such as health, food insecurity, mental illness, all kinds of things.
Yep.
Do that. And then education. Education's the other big equalizer. So fund NYU Business School, where I went, Trinity College, where I went, and also University of Michigan and WashU in St. Louis. So fund scholarships for mostly women at those schools. And then what I found and those of you who are involved in entrepreneurship, in philanthropy, I apologize, will find this too. You meet people like Carol Carter, and you want to fund the organizations they're involved in. So a few that I've gotten involved in, well, one, cancer because my father happens to have it, and so I do fund the Waldenstrom Foundation, which is a type of lymphoma. Breast Cancer Research Fund, because we all know someone who's been affected by breast cancer, and Gabrielle's Angel Foundation, which is for lymphoma and leukemia. Okay, and then just a couple other things I'll mention that are super important to me is gun safety, hunger, and I got involved in those because I met someone whose son was murdered in Sandy Hook. And so had to be involved in Sandy Hook Promise. I mean, she's a very good friend of mine, Nicole Hockley. She founded Sandy Hook Promise, so got involved in that. And then the other one is Every Town for Gun Safety, started by Michael Bloomberg. And basically, it's the biggest gun safety organization in the country, 10 million grassroots followers. And then Hunger, the Campaign Against Hunger, Gretchen Carlson's charity Lift Our Voices, so we all have stronger voices in our companies, and our companies can't silence us. And those are some of the causes.
Those are some you all see in the back of Liz's book because they're all listed.
In chapter 15, I get into that.
Yeah, so, well, we would like to leave some time for you all to ask some questions of Liz, because we know that this is a community, and we want to be able to support your success, not just with Liz's insights and her books, but also you all are going through some common things that everyone can learn from the talent that's in this room. So we'd love to open it up now for questions for Liz. And can you just stand up and just speak loudly?
I got a microphone. Stand by. Coming to you.
Oh, good. Thank you.
This is my job.
I didn't know we had an extra mic.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I got you. All right. As they said, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Catherine Schwartz, and I am an internal consultant at past Intent Tool, but also do independent marketing consulting, largely around account-based marketing and go-to-market strategy. Thank you so much for being here with us today. This was awesome. So my question is about customer experience at scale. So you mentioned that it was easy, when Goldman Sachs came to you and said, hey, we need to do this, we need to turn it around. And I've been at Series A companies, and I've been at pre-IPO. I'm about to go to a company that's a public company, and I'm curious, how do you give that type of customer experience at scale? And especially when things are moving really quickly, as they often are in the tech industry. It's 1 week there's a new product release, and then there's another one. And how do you keep your customers engaged and confident in you, and confident in your company's ability to show up for them?
Sure. Well, yeah. Great to meet you, Catherine. Thank you for that question. It's great. I think it's basically encouraging your employees to do the same things you would do, and you do that by compensating them so that when the company does well with the revenues or profitable revenues, they do well. So they are very incentivized. I think that's super important as far as getting your employees to do that, because of course, it's easy for the owners to do it. And another thing we did for our employees is we had some phantom stock. So that incentivized them, like owners as well, aside from how we compensated them. Also promoting them, making sure they are able to lead the teams they deserve to lead. And then, of course, giving them the time they need off after they've done that. As far as the clients, it's about remaining close to the clients and doing it in the ways I was saying earlier, like the one-to-one relationships. And of course, you, the entrepreneur, can't have those over time, but your people can. And that's why you need that large sales team, so that they can remain close to the clients, and the clients will call them. And then it's getting that client feedback, so you really understand what they need, anticipating their needs before they know they have them. And that's really by talking to them, getting their ideas, and then having some of your own ideas based on what they're saying, and getting your employees' ideas. But I think it's the communication, the personal communication and relationships with the clients is so important, to be able to let them know you're there to deliver the service when they need it. You have ideas for them. You want the constant feedback, good and bad, and let them know you'll do what they need. Your mission is to wow them with service. And then, of course, you have to keep it in check, as I said, because your employees can't work 24/7, but you can find ways around that, the ways I was describing. But thank you. Great question.
Great. Question in the back here.
Question.
Go ahead and stand up. Introduce yourself.
And raise your hand if you have another,
Hello, I'm
and we'll
Razeen.
make sure we got the time.
Nice to meet you. First, I'm really grateful for all the insights you have given us today. And I run a company in a similar industry as you, where I use AI model coupled with human translation to translate Asian literature and giving them a platform to Western audience.
Wow.
So I wanted to know if you're ever in a situation, because we deal with a lot of licensing and copyrights and stuff, because I'm in a situation where I have this client who is a really necessity for me, but for short term. But deep down, I know that it will hurt me long term. So what should I do in that kind of situation, if you have ever been?
I'm sorry, deep down you know that what?
Deep down, I know the client, the stuff that I have to give away to this client will hurt me long term, hurt the long-term goal of my business. And the
With
growth of it.
piracy?
Well, I mean, yeah, as far as from a legal standpoint, I mean, have you talked to an attorney about how you can set it up so it's your property, not theirs?
Yeah.
And
Yes, but we have so this client, I'm in a contract with them, but back then we were pretty small. We were just starting up, but now we have grown pretty big, and we want to renegotiate the contract, and they still want to go by the similar terms as before, but I know that this will hurt me long term, like long-term growth of the company.
yeah, I mean, I think you can just say to them that, unfortunately, our advisors have recommended we renegotiate the contract. We love working with you, but we need to, for our own protection, for our own stability. This is what we need to do with all of our clients.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what I would do. And, it sounds like you've been very successful. That relates to another question. You want to make sure no one client is too big a percentage of your revenue. I did not talk about that, but that's something we worked very hard on. And at the time I sold in 2018, after 26 years, we had 11,000 clients, something like that. The point being, you want to be able to say that to your client, and if they say, well, then no deal, we're done, you don't want it to affect you in a big way. Whether you lose a client for that reason or because someone leaves the company, something gets messed up, but I think that's what you need to tell them, and just say it's been recommended by your attorneys that you do this for the stability of the company. You have to do this with all your clients, and hopefully that will work.
And we probably have time for 2 more, so we'll go real quickly here.
Yeah, no problem.
And then Liz is going to be over here, and we'll be signing some books later. But we're going to do it very quietly because we do not want to interrupt the next session. So we'll be very respectful. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Martin. I'm from Latvia. I'm here on the Young Transatlantic Innovation Leaders Initiative program. So there's a couple of European young entrepreneurs here listening, and I thank you. That's really inspiring, how to grow a business in the US. So my question is, I have a company that's now about reaching the stage where I need to start to employ my first employee. So how do you mentioned that in an area of many competitors, many other companies were fighting for the talent, how do you get that first employee to come on board? And do you remember your first employee, and how did you convince him to join your company?
Oh, I do, and I remember how hard it was in the 90s. We started in 1992, and there were no Amazons and Googles and Facebooks or Metas out there. There was nothing. So it's hard. So what can you do? Financially incentivize them. Make it so when you hire them, you're making it so that, assuming they do a good job, they make more than they could in virtually any other job. And then, of course, if they're not successful, they make less. You could set up a phantom stock program. I mean, I know you may as well start early because you don't want to give away actual equity, because I'm a big believer in not doing that if you can avoid it. I think sharing the vision and finding someone who's really entrepreneurial, really motivated, who loves the idea of building their own company and making it so that if they do, they're going to do much better. They'll have the chance to manage a bunch of people. And, that's super important as well. And, someone who really believes in the vision and would be an entrepreneur themselves, except you're taking the risk. You're taking more of the risk, I could say. So someone who's really motivated, very entrepreneurial, that's what you need for those first few employees. And then you let them know about all the opportunity, like promotion-wise, financially, and where you could go, and that you may go public one day, and all of that. So you need someone kind of a lot like you.
Yeah, clone.
Okay, last question.
And we'll go one. We'll just go fast, and we'll get you over there too.
Hi, my name is Juliana Baker. We've created an app that has a mainly female audience, and I guess I was just wondering if you have any advice for how to approach investors who might be more male-dominated, because I guess usually we come across investors that are male.
No, that's a great question, and I hear it all the time. Women can't get funding because it's usually men who are making the decisions. So, all I can say I'd be curious what the product is, but I don't know how much time we have. But what is the product?
It's a mobile app that is for skincare, makeup, hair care, creating routines, and getting people more connected to those products so that other people can go and easily purchase those products.
Yeah, and you can talk about the size of the industry, right? I don't know how many hundreds of billions of dollars it is. So I think that they'll relate to and talk about how all the women in their lives, their mothers, their wives, their children, this is critical to them and how it can change things for them. I'm just trying to think of something else. I'm sure
And look for women investors.
Pardon me?
Look for women investors,
yes,
too. There are women investors.
That's the other big one. No, that is the other big one. It just might be that you're encountering a lot of men. But yes, there are more and more women investors. And I've just there's so many that are cropping up that I've just invested with one. I have a few investments of my own, but then I also I invest with women investors. So yes, I love that. Women, private equity funds, women venture capital funds, absolutely. Yep. Just trying to think of anything else, but yes, that's what you need to do.
And we'll go to the very last one, and then we're going to wrap up because we're at time, and we want to make sure we're super respectful of the next session.
All right, thanks. My name is Vladislav. Regarding the feedback sessions that you have with your employees, could you give an example of how does that look like?
Sure. What I would say, when I'm sitting in a one-on-one meeting with them is I might say, how are things going for you? And I love doing this with people who were direct reports and even over time indirect reports, but how are things going? And again, with that one too, they would sometimes say, fine. I'm like, no, really, how are they going? Oh, they're okay. It's like, no, really, is everything okay with you? And then sometimes they open up. And then if there's a real issue, you get to it and you can come up with a solution so that they're happy personally at your job. So that's one thing. Then ask them how they feel about things are going at work and with their career. Like, are they on track with their career where they want to go? And then if you haven't made it clear to them and they're not clear how to get to the next level, you come up with a plan for them. Also, you ask them for feedback about how they feel about the company as a whole, the department, working with you, and you get that feedback, and you take it, and you react to it. So these are the questions I would ask. And then, of course, I said that other question, my favorite question, what would you do differently if you owned the company? But, you want to make sure their career's on track, they're on track personally, or in the order I said, personally, career's on track, and then day in and day out, are they happy? And then what ideas do they have? I think those are the 4 main things you want to cover. And it makes such a difference because, as we all know, the number one reason people quit jobs is the relationship they have with their manager. So super important. And it'll make them happy and make the company better.
Awesome. All right, well, we are going to be over here, and we'll be quietly sharing Liz's book. She'll be doing some signings, and we want to thank again Kate and Eric Matisik and everybody with Downtown Denver Partnership and Denver Startup Week for having us here today, and we hope we see you all at Global Minded next June, or we've got an event at the United Nations on June 10th where Liz will also be featured for that. So thanks, and let's give Liz a big round of applause.
Thank you all so much. Wonderful being